Lovely. So I'm just going to get started with a bit of an introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for our My STEM Future speaker series. So this evening we're joined by Bushra, and she'll be talking to us about her job and her role. Hi, Bushra.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak to everyone today.
Thank you for coming. Lovely to have you.
No, really looking forward to this. So I'll just start sharing my screen. Wonderful. So good evening, everybody. I'm Bushra Schuitemaker, and I'm a zoologist. I'm going to be talking to you about my journey through STEM and my future possibly as well. There's going to be some polls involved, and there's also going to be a chance for you to ask me any questions at the end, but feel free to post the questions throughout the talk and we'll get round to them. So I'm a zoologist and I love animals. I've loved animals for as long as I can remember. I love fluffy ones. I love feathered ones. I love scaly ones. I love them if they're weird, if they're gross, if they're smelly, or if they're cute and cuddly. I love all animals. But there was one animal that always seemed to keep coming back into my life, and that was chickens. So I think chickens were always my destiny. But how did I go from being this cute little girl keeping chickens in her back garden and hatching eggs in an incubator in her kitchen to now doing science and research on chickens at an academic level and also earning my doctorate? Well, to start with, I went to high school, much like many of you, I'm sure, today are also currently going through their GCSEs. Some of my favourite subjects were English, biology, and physical education. I've always loved sports. I've played rugby since I was about 12 years old, but generally just absolutely adore all sports. And I've always loved English as well. I love reading. I love getting stuck into a really good book. During my high school experience, I also did a lot of extracurricular activities. So I was part of a local radio station. I was involved in our school council. I was the young mayor for the area. I also did a lot of performing arts. I love being on stage. I love singing. I love dancing. As I mentioned, I was part of the rugby club and also actually earned becoming a community coach as well. So I wasn't just playing rugby, I was getting to teach it and coach it too. I did a lot of kayaking. That's my other really key sport that I love to do. And I even did my Gold Duke of Edinburgh with this. And I was also a member of Girl Guiding UK. And with this, I actually got to go to India, as well as some other really cool experiences. So obviously, I had my education, but alongside my education, I had all of these extracurricular activities as well. After high school, I went to sixth form. This was at Ormiston Rivers Academy. And the A-levels I chose to do were English, media communications, physical education, and biology. As I mentioned at GCSE level, I loved English, I really loved PE, and I've always loved biology. And media and communication seemed like a really cool thing to get involved with as well. So ultimately, I was picking the subjects I was most passionate about and most interested in. As well, alongside my education, just like with my GCSEs, I was also doing other extracurricular activities. So I was still a member of Girl Guiding UK, and I helped to set up the first ever girl guiding radio show called Genie. As part of this radio show, I actually got to meet Ed Sheeran and the Queen, which were just incredible life experiences. I also went to Lilongwe Wildlife Centre in Malawi. This was an amazing opportunity. And I went here from the age of 18 and I spent the summer before going to university rescuing, rehabilitating animals, providing local education. And this was part of the Born Free Foundation. In order for me to go to Malawi and have this experience, I actually have to fundraise the money myself. And this was, again, something that's been really useful in my later life in understanding how to budget things, understanding how to fundraise and organize events as well in order to do that. Following on from sixth form, I went to university. I chose to go to ANGLIA RUSKIN University in Cambridge to do Bachelor's of Science honours in zoology. As I mentioned, I've always loved animals. So for me, it just made sense to go to university to learn more about them. Some of my highlights from going to ANGLIA RUSKIN and doing this undergraduate degree were earning my PADI Advanced Open Water Diving License. And you can see in the picture there, me trying to do some underwater surveying. I also got to do some ecological surveying in Devon, as well as learning how to design zoo enclosures in the Netherlands. When I was trying to pick which university I wanted to go to, I was specifically looking at what modules and what opportunities they could provide me. So I'm really practical. I love being hands-on, and this university course offered the most hands-on experience. So for me, of course, I wanted to go here. Just like with my GCSEs and my A-levels, I also did extracurricular activities alongside my work. So I was again a member of the rugby club. This was the Anglia Ruskin University Rugby Club. And I also was able to earn a sports scholarship during my time. And that was because I was so enthusiastic with kayaking, and I actually managed to get to a national level. So that was able to support me in what I was doing. I also had to work full time whilst I was studying. I come from a lower socioeconomic background, so I needed to support myself financially on top of the bursary that I was getting. So all throughout university, I worked as a waitress or a restaurant supervisor. And then outside of term time, during summer holidays and school holidays, I work as an NCS activity leader. During my university, I discovered that I was struggling a little bit when it came to exams and when it came to essays. And some of my lecturers noticed this as well. They knew I had no problem doing the practical activities and I had no issue talking about the science. But when it came to actually having to write an essay or take an exam, I really struggled. And so in the final year of university, I found out why this was. It was because I had dyspraxia and dyslexia. This had never been diagnosed or even mentioned to me before. And it turns out, by finding this diagnosis, I was actually able to get the support and the resources that I needed. This really helped me to unlock my potential and to better understand the way that my mind works. Just because it doesn't work in a neurotypical way doesn't mean that it's any less good. In fact, the biggest difference I found is that I stopped calling myself stupid because I realized I'm not stupid. I just have to learn things in a different way. After university, I decided I've had enough of education for now. I think I want to start earning some real money. So I went to the Wellcome Sanger Institute, also in Cambridge, and I was working as an animal technician. Being an animal technician, I got to help a lot with the welfare and husbandry of animals, particularly mice, but I also got to be involved with some really important fundamental research on cancer, obesity, and malaria. During my time working as an animal technician, people noticed that I was really enthusiastic and I really enjoyed science. I've always loved biology. Because this was recognised, I was actually able to progress to becoming a scientist for Cancer Research UK. During my time with Cancer Research UK, I was doing drug target development. So I was actually trying to find targets to be able to treat cancer. So it really felt like the science I was doing was going to help people. I was working in immune oncology, so trying to program the immune system in order to help fight away cancer cells. And here you can see a cute little comic of my regulatory T cell. And this was the particular type of cell that I was really focused on. During these two positions, being enthusiastic, I was able to get peer-reviewed publications. Peer-reviewed publications are really important in academia. This is the way that we're able to sell our science and to explain our science to a wider audience. The fact that it's peer-reviewed means that other scientists have read this work and confirmed all the science is definitely correct. So I published a paper that was specifically to do with the work I was doing, to do with cancer and immune cells, but I also was able to publish 2 more papers. And these papers were more of a passion project. It wasn't necessarily the research I was directly engaging in, but it was something I was doing a lot of reading about. And that was about better understanding how cancer affects animals. So some domestic animals, but also animals in the wild. Getting this experience was fantastic, but I realized that I wanted to do even more. I wanted to be the one to come up with the different ideas that we get to research. So this is what made me think, maybe I want to do a PhD. I'm currently at the QUADRAM Institute Biosciences. So this is with the University of East Anglia in Norwich. And I'm on what's called a doctoral training program. So a PhD is an advanced type of degree. I'm working alongside doing my research, but they pay me to do the research. They pay for all of my costs. They pay for all of the university costs, as well as giving me a nice little monthly salary. That means that I don't have to do any waitressing. I don't have to pick up any second jobs. I can really just focus on my studies and really focus on my research. And there are different ways you can get funding for a PhD that I've put on the slide. So some people pay for it themselves out of their pocket, but there are also loads of other sources as well. But does anyone know what a PhD stands for? So there's going to be a poll for you now. See if you think a PhD stands for a Doctorate of Philosophy, a Doctorate of Physiology, or a Doctorate of Psychology. Let me know what you think.
Awesome. So we're getting responses in already. Ooh. Got a bit of a mix.
Ooh.
A couple more seconds. Awesome. So we've got a mixed batch.
Oh, interesting. Something Doctorate of Philosophy and something Physiology. I don't blame you for thinking physiology. No one thought psychology, though. Unsurprising. Well, the answer is Doctorate of Philosophy. So that's because I'm trying to understand the philosophy. So really understanding the hypotheses and the thought process that goes behind the research and goes behind the science. So I'm doing my PhD in zoology, just like I did my Bachelor's of Science in zoology. So this is a postgraduate research degree. That means I don't go through any teaching. I don't have to sit through any lectures or seminars. That doesn't mean that I'm not learning. I'm learning something new every single day, but I'm learning it by practically doing the science myself. I mentioned I'm a really practical person, so this suits me perfectly. A big part of a PhD is the fact that this is a completely independent project. I am in a group. I have people around me. I have a supervisor who helps to guide me along the way. But ultimately, everything is down to me. And I really love having this independence because it means that I get to see science from start to finish, from me collecting samples to analysing the data to publishing those papers, seeing the whole process. In order to get my PhD at the end of 4 years, I have to write a thesis. This is around 85,000 to 100,000 words. So it is effectively a book at the end of it. My project is to look for novel biomarkers for poultry intestinal health and welfare. Now, this sounds like a really wordy, complicated project, but we will be breaking it down. Before we do that, though, I wanted to tell you about one of the reasons I really got into science and wanted to do a PhD, and that's to do with what's called the known knowns matrix. So in science, we have known knowns. These are things that we are aware of and we understand them. So a zoology example for you, we know that elephants are at risk. We know that their population is declining. And we also know the reasons for that. We know that it's because of climate change. We know that it's because of urbanization. And we also know that it's because of poaching as well. So we're fully aware of the reasons and we're fully aware of what is happening. Then we come on to the known unknowns. These are things that we're aware of, but we maybe don't fully understand. So I've got another zoology example. Hedgehogs are more at risk in rural areas than urban areas. So the fact that hedgehogs are more at risk in the countryside than in cities, we have no idea why that is, but we have the data to back it up. So we know this is a fact, but we don't know what's causing it. So it's a known unknown. We also have unknown knowns. These are things that the things that we understand, but actually we're not aware of it. So another zoology example for you. We know that there must be populations of animals that are at risk. We know that because we've seen these trends in other animal populations, but we might not be able to track these animals. We might not be able to track them because the populations are too small, or maybe they're just too elusive and it's really difficult for us to be able to count them and see them. So we know that there is this risk, but we're not able to get the data to actually quantify it. And then we get on to what I think is the most interesting bit, the unknown unknowns, things that we don't know. So things we are neither aware of nor understand. Another example could be animals that we haven't discovered that could be at risk. As I mentioned with the unknown knowns, there are possibly animal populations that are at risk, but we can't track them, so we don't know. Well, what about the animals we haven't even discovered that yet that are possibly at risk for these same issues? So thinking about these known knowns and known unknowns and unknown knowns, these are really exciting parts of science for me. And this is really where we get to delve into some of the nitty-gritty, exciting, novel things. So that brings me on to my PhD project and breaking it down a little bit for everyone to understand. So identifying novel biomarkers for poultry intestinal health and welfare. Well, the first question is probably, what is a biomarker? We know what a biomarker is. This can be any naturally occurring indicator. So it could be a gene or a microorganism or maybe even a compound, and it could be indicating disease or productivity or other trends. Well, why does it have to be novel? That's part of a PhD, contributing something new to science, something that we don't know yet. The other reason is that no one's been able to do this before. So any biomarker that is found is going to be novel because no one's been able to discover one yet. Why poultry? I'm sure you're asking. Well, other than the fact that I love chickens are 75% of all land animals. There are 3 chickens for every human on the planet. So this is a really important animal, which is everywhere, as well as being a really important and I personally think very cute animal. They're also a major animal protein source for the global population. They're also a slightly more sustainable animal protein source than, say, cows or pigs, for example, which is especially important because we have such a fast rising population. What is so important about intestinal health? Well, gut health has been linked in humans to stress and mental and emotional health. So thinking also how that might link to the stress of an animal. It's also linked to our immunity. It affects how much nutrients we're able to take up. And what I think is most exciting is our microbiome. So these are all the microorganisms that are present in our gut. And we often think of microorganisms like bacteria as bad, but we've recently discovered there are so many good bacteria that are essential to all life on Earth. And this is where science can get really exciting. You might be wondering, well, how does welfare fit in? By being able to monitor animals better, we're able to predict if they're going to get disease or be able to intervene with some kind of therapeutics before they get sick. So we can better look after our animals and give farmers and people who keep chickens at home a chance to look after them better as well by trying to be a bit more preemptive about possible health conditions. So that's how it really affects the welfare of animals. In 2008, the World Health Organization came up with this thing called the One Health Initiative. So the One Health Initiative is taking healthy animals, healthy humans, and also a healthy environment and looking at all of these things as one. Instead of just having doctors looking at healthy humans, and instead of just having zoologists and vets looking at healthy animals, and ecologists and conservationists looking at a healthy environment, we should be looking at all three of these things all together from the get-go. And my project is a really great opportunity to look at that. By thinking of healthy animals and being preemptive of disease, we're also going to ensure that we have better animals that will go through meat and egg production, which will then benefit human health. And of course, sustainable farming demands are really essential. So we can also think about how we can help our environment by better managing the poultry and better managing chickens and farm animals. So with my project, one of the really exciting things is being able to collaborate. I get to work at Oxford University to look at the healthy animals. So I get to look at the immune system. I get to work in Norwich at the University of East Anglia, and also this place called the QUADRAM Institute, to think more about the healthy human side of it, how looking after animals will have an impact on human health. What's really exciting about working at this QUADRAM Institute is they're really focused on human health. So I get to use the most advanced scientific resources and have access to super advanced scientific expertise and then apply that to chickens. It's really exciting. And then healthy environment. I work with an industry partner, so I get to work directly with commercial farms. That means the research I'm doing is going to directly impact the farmers and also the animals themselves. I wanted to tell you a bit more about the life for a commercial chicken. So commercial chickens specifically for meat production, they've been selectively bred in order to gain a lot of weight by not eating very much food in quite a short amount of time. They're fully grown by 36 days after hatching. In order to support them during this development, we actually give them 3 different types of diet during their life cycle. So the grower diet, for example, the one in the middle, they have much higher calcium nutrient density in their food because that helps them to grow their bones in order to support this massive weight gain that they have. One of the other things that's really interesting about commercial chickens is they actually spray feces on the eggs before the chicks get to hatch. The reason for this is so that they can get some of that initial microbiome, so that good bacteria, they can get those initial good bacteria right from when they are first hatching. I take samples during the life of the chickens. Can anyone guess the type of samples that I collect? So there'll be some options for you. Another poll. What type of samples do you think I collect during the life cycle of a chicken? We'll see.
Well, we've got everyone going already.
Oh, very exciting.
Very fast this evening. Oh, and we've got a chat box answer as well. So we've got feces. So I'll end the poll and share the results. So we've got most people think feces, a bit of blood, a bit of tissues.
Nice. Very good. Yeah. Well, in fact, it is. Ooh. There we go. My animation works. It is, in fact, feces. I collect chicken poo. You hear about other zoologists and they get to go to the rainforest or go deep sea diving, and I go to Scotland, visit some farms and collect chicken poo. But I love it and I would not have it any other way. But what do I do with this chicken poo? Well, there are so many things that I can learn by looking at the feces of these animals. The first thing, as I mentioned, is the microbiome. So looking at all the different microorganisms that are present within the gut. As well as having bacteria, there's also fungi and viruses as well. And it's important to think about the interactions they're all making and how they actually build an ecological community inside your gut. As well as looking at all the different microorganisms, I like to look at the genes as well, because this tells me what those microorganisms are capable of doing. Are they really important for converting food into energy, or are they really important for the immune system? All of that can inform me to benefit the chickens. I also look at the different compounds that are present. So these could be compounds that are created from the microbiome, so it could be from the bacteria, or it could be compounds from the food that the chickens have digested. I like to look at water being a really, really key one, because if your feces is a little watery, you probably have a bit of an upset tummy. The same is true for chickens. If we notice really watery feces, we know that something is probably up with their gut health. Calcium being another important one that I mentioned earlier, because this is something that we provide during the middle stage of their life cycle in order for them to have that rapid bone development. So again, I can measure the calcium in the feces. I also do a really cool technique called immunohistochemistry. So what this picture is actually an intestinal wall. So by looking at the intestinal wall of chickens, I'm then able to assess whether or not their gut has developed really well, or maybe their gut hasn't developed very well. And that's really important, because that's going to have a really big impact on the animal's health. And then, of course, looking at their general health and productivity. Are they gaining weight? Are they particularly small compared to the rest of the flock? Are they behaving a little bit differently, maybe a bit antisocially? All these are really important factors. So by taking into consideration all these different areas of science and all these different types of analysis, I'm then able to identify a fecal biomarker for poultry intestinal health and welfare. So I hope that explains to you a little bit, at least, about the kind of science that I am typically doing on a day-to-day basis. But now we're going to play a bit of a game. So there are a whole range of different things that can have an influence on the chicken's gut. And the same is true for humans and other animals as well. We split up these influences into being environmental influences, so more external factors, and also host influences, so more internal factors. With the environmental or external factors, these are generally things that you'll find farmers are able to control. Whereas with the host factors, they're really depending on us as scientists to be able to delve into understanding this a bit better. So we're going to play a little bit of a game now. I'm going to show you a word, and you have to guess whether or not you think this is an environmental factor or a host factor. So once I put the word up, you can just write it as soon as you think you know what it is into the chat box. So we'll go through these relatively quickly. So as soon as you think you know the answer, feel free to throw it into the chat box. So the first one. Oh, yeah.
Just for ease, if you think it's either environmental, just put an E. If you think it's for host, just put an H, and we'll see how that goes. So for temperature, we'll start there. Oh, we've got E's already. Do we think that's environmental?
Absolutely. Fantastic. I feel like there's probably a lot of E's coming in for this one. Don't worry. They will get a little bit harder as we go on. So absolutely, temperature is completely environmental and something that farmers can control, at least with inside the chicken shed. Temperature is really important because chickens are birds. They're not mammals. So they actually lose heat in a different way to us. Chickens aren't able to sweat. Instead, what they have to do is open their mouth really wide and let water evaporate from their lungs. That's how they cool down. You might notice on a really hot day, if you spot some birds in your garden, they also might be sitting with their mouths open. And that's again because they're trying to get rid of some of the excess heat from inside their body. Also, chickens have a higher body temperature than us. The human body temperature is around 36 degrees, whereas chickens, 42 degrees. So quite a lot higher. Yeah, it's quite a lot higher. So that's why it's really important for farmers to make sure that they're not getting too hot and overheating. Okay, I've got another one for you. Do you think this is E for environmental or H for host? It's lighting. So do you think the lighting is E or an H? See, lots of them coming in.
Yeah, we've got a mix of E's and H's. I think H's are the most popular one at the moment.
Interesting. So lighting is actually an environmental thing. This is, again, something that the farmer is able to control. So whether that is artificial lighting inside the chicken shed, or whether that is giving the chicken access to outside so that they can get into some sunlight as well. And you may have heard about avian influenza being a really big problem over the last couple of years. And it's meant that we've had to keep chickens indoors in order to protect them from getting influenza from wild birds, particularly migratory birds. What's really interesting with chickens is they don't look at the same light spectrum as we do. We can see all these different colours, but with chickens, they're mostly seeing things in blue and in green. So actually, if you put blue and green lights inside your chicken shed, your chickens have a much easier time of being able to see things, and they actually eat more food because it's much easier for them to see where the food is. So lighting makes a really big difference. The next one we have, genetics. Do you think this is E, environmental, or H, host?
We've got loads of hosts coming in. Yep.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
Everyone's gone for host.
Yeah, so genetics is absolutely host. They're really depending on our scientists to understand the difference in the genes of the chickens in order to help their gut health. Geographical location. So where the chicken is in the world. Is that environmental or is that host?
We're getting mainly environmental. We've got one host.
Cool. Yeah, so yeah, this one is in fact environmental. Absolutely. So chickens in the UK might have a very different lifestyle to chickens in America or chickens in Asia or chickens in Africa, because they have very different climates. They also have very different food sources as well, and these can have an influence on the gut. What about age? Do we think that's environmental or host? Oh, lots are coming in. Absolutely. Yeah. So this one again is the host. So much like with humans and with other animals, as we get older, our body develops. And with those developments, we have changes, and changes also included in our gut. So a newly hatched chick has a very different gut to one of the chickens that have reached the end of their life cycle at 35 days after hatching. Okay, so sex. Whether or not it is male or female, is that environmental or host? Lots coming in for this one. Yeah. Again. Thought this would be quite a quick one. So yeah, whether or not the chicken is a male chicken or a female chicken has an impact on the gut. Slight differences, but still important differences for us to recognize as scientists. The housing. So housing, whether or not the chicken is kept inside, outside, if it's in a big shed, if it's in a small shed, what kind of thing do you think that is?
Environmental, everyone's going for.
Excellent. So absolutely also environmental. Just like with geographical location, the kind of conditions a chicken is being kept in is going to influence the gut health. The next one is immunity. We're going to get a bit harder now, I think. So do we think this is environmental or host?
Got host so far.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So the immune system is completely dependent on the host, and there are some things we can better understand as scientists to improve the gut immunity. We can use selective breeding techniques in order to breed chickens that have much better immunity than others to ensure they have really robust gut health. Diet and feed additives. So what we're feeding them, what we're adding to the feed. Do we think that's an environmental influence or a host influence?
Yeah, everyone's thinking environmental so far.
Fabulous. Absolutely. Of course, what we are eating has a huge impact on our gut. If we are eating absolute rubbish, our gut's not going to be very healthy. Whereas if we're eating a really diverse diet that has all the correct nutrients, we're going to have a much healthier gut. Stress. Do we think stress is down to the environment, or do we think that's more down to the host? This one's definitely a trickier one.
Ooh, they're taking a bit to think about it as well. So we've got a mix of environmental and host.
So this one I've put down as host, only because we do find that individual chickens, just like with humans, experience stress a little bit differently. What might be really stressful for one chicken isn't very stressful for another chicken. So you might have a chicken that really enjoys being handled. It loves being picked up. You might have another chicken who absolutely hates it. So it comes down to the individuals. That being said, there are certainly things that you could introduce to an environment that would make the animal stress, but we would see different stress levels in different animals. The next one is veterinary treatments. Do we think this is an environmental one, or do we think this is a host one?
Well, they're more certain about this one. Environmental.
Absolutely. So it's going to be down to the farmer to call in the vet, to ask the vet to give treatments to these animals. And this is an environmental thing. It's an external thing that is happening to the animals. And now we have the last one. So flock composition, whether or not it's a big flock, a small flock, a flock that has old chickens and young chickens, if it's a flock that's all the same age. So what is making up that flock? Do you think that's environmental or host?
Majority think that is environmental, but maybe host as well.
So this one again is environmental. It will be down to the farmer to appropriately manage his flock. One way that farmers manage this is by keeping chickens of a certain age all separately. Other farmers don't do that. They like for all their chickens to be mixed in together, and there are benefits for both. It really depends on the individual farm. So I hope you enjoyed that game. Don't worry, we have more fun games coming up. But I wanted to talk to you about the fact that it's not just about the research for me as a scientist and as a zoologist. The work that I'm doing now is paid for by taxpayers. I'm government funding. So I feel like I have a responsibility to give back to the people who are paying for me to do this amazing research. Plus, I really believe that science should be for everyone. For a very long time, science was very much gatekeeped by highly academic people and older people, and that's not the case. We know that now, and we really value the diversity in science as well. Different people can bring different ideas, and that's really, really important. So as part of giving back, I have to promote my research. I need people to be interested in what I'm researching. Otherwise, no one's going to read my papers and no one's going to be interested in what I'm doing. This is also important for later on in my career, where I might actually have to be finding grants. So sourcing money to do my research. It's all about me promoting what I do. The ways that I do this is by going on to radio programs to talk about my research, as well as attending international conferences where I get to share my research with other scientists who are engaged in similar areas. I also think it's really important to promote work culture. So it's not just about the research I'm doing, it's about how I'm doing it as well. It's about who is in my lab group, who are the different people. One of the ways that I'm able to do this is by being really active in equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I'm a member of a number of different research groups and committees and networks that's all looking to promote ethnic and racial diversity, as well as other equalities in science, to make sure that we do have this diversity, which is really, really valuable. For me, as well as it being about research, it's really about community as well. As much as the PhD project is an independent project, there are so many other aspects of science and so much research that goes on where you need to have people around you in order to support that. You can't be expected to know every single thing. Sometimes you need to ask for help and bring other people onto a project. It's also good for you to find people that share similar ambitions, similar experiences as well. So for me, I'm part of the Racial, Ethnic Equality and Diversity Network, or READ Ecological Network, which is a special interest group of the British Ecological Society. By being a part of this ecological network, I'm able to meet other people from ethnic minority backgrounds that are also engaged in animal science, wildlife science, conservation. There are also people who are wildlife videographers and wildlife photographers. So it's really great to find these different people. one of the things I realized while I was doing my undergraduate, so my Bachelor's of Science at university in ANGLIA, RUSKIN, is that I was the only person of color on my course. There was also no people of color teaching me either. So there is a real disparity in ethnicities, particularly when it comes to the environmental and agricultural industry. In fact, the agricultural industry is the least diverse in the UK, which is followed by the environmental industry. I think the agriculture industry is around 97% white. And that's not just farmers, that's people like me, researchers as well, who are engaging in agriculture. And as I keep saying, there is real value in diversity. There's also other ways that you can find communities. I love doing my extracurricular activities. I love doing additional things. I'm not just about work. I'm not just about focusing on education. That's a really important part of my life. But so is leisure, so is enjoying the outdoors, so is walking, so is making friends and meeting people. These are all just as important aspects of my life. So I've put here, and also you'll be able to have the links as well, but just a couple of groups that I've been involved in. So Flock Together is a birdwatching group for people of colour who don't have very much experience in birdwatching. There's also Black Girls Hike, which is a fantastic group, and I thoroughly enjoy being able to explore the British countryside with other Black women. There's also People of Colour Paddle. I mentioned that I am an avid kayaker. I love kayaking. I love canoeing. I got my sports scholarship while I was at university, but I was the only person of colour I'd ever seen doing this sport. So the fact there is actually now organisations and groups that you can join so you don't have to feel so alone is really, really special. I also think it's really important to stay engaged with other conservation things that I do. Although I'm doing this PhD focused on chickens and focused on poultry, I love all animals. So I like to get involved in what's called citizen or community science projects. You don't need any previous knowledge or any previous experience, but you're able to learn how to do ecological surveying, and you get to contribute to actual science, which might even lead to law changes and policy changes and ways that we can protect these animals simply by counting the number of birds that visit my garden, counting the number of butterflies that I see out on a walk. I also got involved with one of our local governing bodies. So this is called the Middle Level Commissioners. What they do is they manage the different waterways that are in Norfolk. So the drains and the rivers, whether or not things are flooding, whether or not they can build, what about farming as well. The main thing that I do for them is I help to see if there are any protected animals in these areas, such as eels or water voles or otters. Because if we have a presence of those animals, you absolutely cannot build there. So this is a way for me to help my local community still engage with other animals and still get to learn new skills for ecology. I love to be able to inspire others. I really think it's important to give back. I feel so lucky to do the kind of science that I get to do. And I really hope that other people can recognise that they can absolutely do this kind of career as well. So some of the ways that I do that is I do quite a lot of freelance writing, such as for BBC Countryfile magazine. I talk about different walks you can go on or different ways you can explore the countryside. I've also got involved in the Festival of Nature, which is a huge festival that goes all over the UK, as well as having some really exciting events in Bristol as well. And the Biodiverse Project, which is all about celebrating diversity in biological sciences and the natural world. So this is a great way for me to share my experiences, much like I'm doing today, but also to meet other people as well who are similarly engaged in these kind of topics. So before we go into our little game to end off the session, I wanted to give you some of my personal tips and advice for pursuing a career in STEM or academia or science in general. And the first is passion and persistence. Be passionate, enjoy what you do, follow what you love. But it's also, you might not get into your first choice university, or you might not get that job that you really wanted to apply for. That's okay. Try again next year. When I was applying for PhD programs, I applied for 2 years before I finally found the one that fitted exactly what I needed and exactly what I wanted. So I was persistent and continued to be passionate and led me to where I am today. I mentioned about all the extracurricular activities I do and other things I like to get involved in. Those experiences have really helped me as a scientist. You wouldn't think that playing rugby would help you as a scientist, but it's really helped me to understand what it is to be a team player. These are all things that you can draw on as a scientist, and so many transferable skills you might find as well. It's good to seek mentorship at whatever level of education or career you're at. Mentorship can be a formal thing where you have to check in with someone on a set regular basis and you have certain objectives that you want to achieve, or you can have informal mentorship, just going for a cup of tea with someone, having a little Zoom call and having a chat with someone. These are all types of mentorship that you can have, and they can be from your teachers. They can be from someone who inspired you on social media and you dropped an email to. They can be absolutely anyone. And I found people are always really, really happy to be asked to give mentorship. It's a real honor to be asked. So if there is someone who really inspires you, reach out to them, ask them if they can mentor you. Or if someone has a career path that you really want, ask them if they can mentor you so you can end up in a similar career path. It's good to diversify your interests. I think a lot of people think you can only pursue science if you have this single track focus and you only care about one thing. But I've shown that's not the case. By drawing from my experiences, by doing these different activities, it's really helped to build me as a more well-rounded scientist. And then my final piece of advice is just get involved at any level. Try and get some experience, even if it is just a random day here or there, a weekend once every 2 months. See what experience you can get and really find out what it is that you enjoy and what it is that you then want to pursue. So we are going to have time for questions at the end, but I thought it would be fun to end on a bit of a silly game. This game is called Chickens or Dickens. There are more than 500 breeds of chicken in the world and more than 1,000 Dickens characters. But can you tell which one the chicken breed is? So I'm going to give you 2 different Dickens characters and 1 chicken breed, and you have to guess which is the chicken breed. So we're going to be having a poll for this in order for you to do it. So is everybody ready?
Yeah, we're clucking ready.
You're clucking ready. Excellent. So round 1. Which of these do you think is a chicken breed and not a Dickens character? Is it A, Longford? Is it B, Leghorn? Or is it C, Tulkinghorn? See which you think is the chicken breed.
We've got a few coming in.
Excellent. I can give you some more chicken facts while you are all looking at that. So I'll give you chicken fact number 1. They are the closest living relative of the T-Rex. So if you like dinosaurs, you probably like chickens as well. They're very similar.
We're going to end that one. So share it up. We've got also in the chat box B. So we've got 14. We've got 7 people who say Leghorn.
Excellent. Fantastic. So the answer is, in fact, Leghorn. This is actually the breed of chicken that we most widely use commercially for egg production. So if you've got some eggs in the fridge, good chance they've come from a Leghorn. Longford and Tulkinghorn were, in fact, Dickens characters. So we'll go for round 2. Do you think the chicken breed is A, Wopsle, B, Fezziwig, or C, Frizzle?
Those are some names.
That's the thing. It's much harder than you think. You'd never realise that chicken breeds and Dickens characters could be so similar.
Oh.
There we go. Well,
chicken fact number 2.
Chicken fact number 2. Everyone always asks me, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, I can tell you about 10 years ago, researchers discovered it was, in fact, the egg. The egg came first. So if you take nothing else away from this seminar, you can go and tell someone what came first, the chicken or the egg. It was the egg. So they were able to use evolutionary techniques in order to discover this. And they found it was, in fact, the egg that would have housed the first chicken effectively.
Wow, that's fantastic. So we've got majority of people think wopsle. And then the second one is frizzle. So which is it?
So let's find out. The answer is actually frizzle. This is a very fun looking kind of chicken, very fancy. You can understand why it's called a frizzle chicken. Wopsle and Fezziwig were in fact Dickens characters. See, I told you it's harder than you think it's going to be. So let's move on to round 3. Do you think the chicken breed is a Welsummer, Honey Thunder, or Chicken Stalker? So I'll let you decide that. And for my chicken fact number 3, chicks, 1-day-old chicks, so just after hatching, can do basic maths. So if you put a number of things in front of them, say beads or maybe other chicks or even eggs, and then you remove one, they will be able to recognize that one is removed. And you can do this for a number of things. They can pretty much count up to 10.
My word, I did not know chickens can count, and especially that young. I mean, they beat me.
It is talented. Okay, let's find out what people think.
Majority are Honey Thunder and then Welsummer. So which one?
Oh, Honey Thunder would sound like a really lovely chicken name, but Welsummer is actually the answer. But this one tricks everyone. Honey Thunder definitely sounds like a chicken breed, and Chicken Stalker, that was a bit of a red herring, I think. So we'll come on now to our final round. So do you think Silky is a chicken breed, Seabright is a chicken breed, or Rosecomb is a chicken breed? So you can have a look and see what answers you find. And for my final chicken fact, I've already given you all the best ones, but I just want to reiterate the fact that there are 3 chickens for every human on the planet. There is about 20 billion chickens in the world.
That's a lot of chickens. That's
more than any other bird, more than most animals. If you put all the other domestic birds together, it still wouldn't come close to how many chickens we have.
Unbelievable. Wow. So we've got a bit split again. So we've got Silky as our main leader, then we've got Rosecomb and Seabright. So a bit of a mixed batch here.
Oh, not bad. Well, do you know what? I was a bit cheeky. That was actually a chick question. In fact, all 3 of these are chicken breeds. So that brings me to the end of the session. Thank you all very much for listening. I've put my social media handle up on there. I'm more than happy for people to follow me or drop me messages. Otherwise, I'd love to take some questions now if you have any. You want more questions about chickens or about the career or science, whichever you like.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Bushra. So a big round of applause from me. That's fantastic. And I've learned a lot about chickens, and we'll just give it a few more minutes then. If anyone has any questions, we've got about 6 minutes if you want to add them into the chat box or the Q&A. And we'll just give that a few minutes. And if there is anything anyone thinks of after the session that they would like to ask Bushra, we can always email her. If you email us at engage@welcomeconnectingscience.org, if you suddenly have a question about a career or a random chicken question, then we'll get that one going. We've got really interesting. So I'm wondering about how did scientists find out that the egg came first?
Oh, so they were basically looking on a genetic level. We've been really lucky in science over the past decade or so in having this thing called next generation sequencing. What that's able to do, I'm sure you've heard about the Human Genome Project, but it's also meant that we could look at other genomes as well. So the chicken genome was the first bird genome to be sequenced, but they can even genome dinosaurs and other things that they have. As long as there is a small fragment of DNA sample, they're able to sequence it and find out what genes are present. So by doing this kind of sequencing, they were able to find out which genes came first to answer which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Wow, so that is really good. Do you think that it is more sustainable for the main source of protein for human diet to be based on Animal meat or synthetic meat like corn? That's quite a controversial question.
This is a really important question, though. So globally, we need to reduce our meat intake by 30%. So everyone ideally needs to reduce the amount of meat they're eating. And I think people who are vegan and vegetarian are doing a fantastic job at that. But realistically, that is not an option for everyone. Some people might have health conditions that prevent them from being vegan or vegetarian. Me, for example, I have really, really low iron, and I'm not able to be a vegetarian without making myself really, really unwell, even if I take supplements and even if I replace that iron with different sources. There's also the consideration as well that meat alternatives can be more expensive. So again, if you're coming from a low socioeconomic background, that might not be an option for you. So although it is really important for people to reduce their meat intake, it's just not a possibility for everyone. So I think as long as you are still able to fulfill your protein sources, but also thinking about other nutrient sources such as fiber being really, really important, you need to make sure that you're meeting all of those requirements. And yeah, sometimes that is just easier to get from animal protein, particularly if you don't have the knowledge, experience, or money or health to be able to go down a non-animal protein route.
That was a great response. Thank you. What are your thoughts on lab-grown poultry or meat? Ooh, lab-grown meat. What do you think?
Oh, I love lab-grown meat. I think it's really, really exciting. Again, it will need to be cheaper than what you can currently buy in the supermarket for it to be an actual sustainable consideration. The other thing that we should take into consideration is it's not necessarily just about the production of animals that's unsustainable, but it's also the transport as well. So you could argue if you're able to get an animal protein, such as if you're able to buy eggs or chickens from a local farm. I'm really lucky living in the countryside. I have farm shops all around me, but that would be far more sustainable than eating something like soy or tofu that has had to be transported into the country. So there are so many things that add to sustainability of our food products, and it's important to look at all of them.
Fantastic. Yeah, I eat a lot of the synthetic meat like corn myself, and it is not cheap at all.
No, not at all. I also eat a lot of corn. I only really eat meat maybe like 2 or 3 times a week. For me, it's a real like special kind of thing. I generally eat more alternative protein sources, but like I said, I literally have to eat meat, otherwise I can become quite unwell.
Yeah, that could be quite concerning. Brilliant. So if no one has any further questions, I think we've just got 2 more minutes to go. So we'll leave you to your evening. So thank you so much again, Bushra. That's a fantastic talk. And it's been really good. Oh, we've got one more. How did you come up with your PhD thesis?
Oh, this is also a really good question. So because I'm on the doctoral training program, I didn't have to come up with the whole idea by myself. This had already been put together by my supervisory group. They wanted to find a student to do this research. That being said, what my project started as and what it is finishing as is something quite different. So although we started by looking just for biomarkers for stress and for health, we've followed the science, we've followed those exciting results, and it's actually led to us also finding probiotics. So although there was this initial outline that was thought up by my supervisory team, and I was then brought in to do this work and do this research, the actual science has kind of changed direction depending on what has been more interesting in the results that we're getting.
So what's your official PhD work title?
So the official title will still be Identifying Novel Biomarkers for Poultry Gut Health. But as well as that, I will also be including the fact that poultry is a great source for probiotics and prebiotics, as well as potential biomarkers as well. And one of the things I'd really like to do is actually see if my research can be applied to other bird species and other poultry species as well.
Nice. And is there a highlight to your PhD so far?
Oh, I've really enjoyed the time that I'm able to spend with the farmers, and the fact that I'm able to, from collecting the samples myself to processing them, to analysing the data, to then presenting it, being able to do that entire pipeline by myself has been really cool. And I've also really loved learning how to code. I really enjoy coding. I'd never had any experience doing it before my PhD, and now it's something that I do quite a lot of and is a really key skill.
That's fantastic. Yeah, a lot of coding is being more and more encouraged in the science field. It's really
Definitely.
taken
And
off.
I've always been someone who I didn't think that I was particularly good at maybe maths. And as I mentioned before, I really struggled with exam taking and essays. So the fact that actually coding has come quite naturally to me was a real surprise.
Fantastic, though. Good fun. Brilliant. So thank you again so much. We'll say good night for this evening. And this will be available on YouTube. And for all the STEM Award students, it will be on the mystemfuture.org website. And again, if you have any more questions for Bushra, we've got engage@welcomeconnectingscience.org or her social media, which was at
Bushy Bio.
Bushy Bio. I was hoping you would say that rather than me. Fantastic. Well, good night, everyone, and see you in the new year.